Look, you know this is the most important election in our nation's history. Now, if Barack Obama wins, it could mean the end of the freedom that we know in the United States. You think it's hyperbole? Many agree with me. Joining us right now on the Savage Nation to discuss this is Matt Kowiak, founder and president of Potomac Strategy Group and columnist for the Washington Times and The Hill. Matt, welcome back to the Savage Nation.
Hey, Michael, great to be with you.
So if the election were held today, who would win and why?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I think generally when incumbents are below 50, they're in trouble. And the thinking behind that is that undecided voters don't break for incumbents generally at the end of a campaign. They know the incumbent. If they're not for them after three or 4 years, generally they're willing to go in another direction. So sort of in a macro sense, I think Obama's in trouble. If you look at it at a micro level, you start looking at these battleground states, the map that Obama had in 2008 creates challenges for Romney. The easiest way for Romney to get to 207 electoral votes is an idea that Karl Rove has put forward that he's called 3-2-1, which is essentially first winning 3 states, Virginia, North Carolina, and Indiana, second winning 2 of the big 3 states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, probably end up being Ohio and Florida, and then winning 1 other state that Obama won, perhaps Wisconsin, perhaps Iowa, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, New Hampshire. There's a number of those states out there that you just have to win 1 of those. But in all, you have to win 6 states Obama won to get to 270 electoral votes. You start looking at those battleground polls, it's possible. But again, you've got to win all 6 of those and not lose any state that McCain won. And so when you start looking at those battleground states, it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Who do you think Romney will pick as his VP, and who do you think he should pick?
I think that there are 2 tracks for VP for Romney, and I'll preface this by saying those who speak don't know, and those who know don't speak. But I think if the first track is if it's close, if it remains close as it is now, essentially a margin of error general election in terms of the overall national vote, I think he's likely to make a selection that doesn't really have any downside risk. That's sort of a do no harm vanilla choice. If it's within that category, I think it's either Senator Rob Portman of Ohio or perhaps former presidential candidate and former Governor Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota, both of whom I think would not create much excitement, but would also do little to no harm to the ticket. Are plausible presidents, don't have any major weaknesses, etc. I think there's also a second track, which is sort of harkens back to McCain 2008. If he's back behind by, let's say, 5 points in mid-July, when it's around the time he has to make the decision, that's when you start to consider choices that might have more upside, but also more potential downside. You could see someone like Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey. You could see Senator Marco Rubio, who's a little bit unproven and untested at the national level. So there are some choices out there like that that have more potential upside, but also more potential downside. For me, I actually think Paul Ryan is the best choice. And the reason I think that is that if you look at where the country is, the challenges we face, the fiscal mess that we're inheriting from Obama, adding $5 trillion to the debt, Paul Ryan is the most articulate, most experienced person in the country to make the case for why we need fiscal responsibility at the federal level. Romney's going to get hit for the Paul Ryan budget. We might as well have the guy who authored the budget, who knows it inside and out, who knows how to make the arguments, and who is very difficult to turn into a demon in Paul Ryan. The fact that he's from Wisconsin, that he's from the Midwest, that he's got a good personal story, that has very little downside, apart from the demagoguery that we'll see, I think he'd be our best possible choice for vice president.
Well, what happens if Obama and Romney tie in electoral votes? Is that even possible?
Well, there are so many scenarios, sure. I'd say it's a 1% chance. Ultimately, I think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be that close. If they do tie 269 to 269 electoral votes, you're going to see a very interesting scene play out. What happens is the vote for president goes to the House of Representatives. Each state delegation gets 1 vote. All 50 states total would vote, and they would elect the president. I don't know what happens if it's 25 to 25 in that circumstance. I presume that wouldn't happen. But for vice president, senators elect the vice president. So if we had a situation where perhaps you had a Democratic majority in the Senate and a Republican majority in the House, you could easily have a Republican president and a Democratic vice president, which would be really quite amazing.
What will Tuesday's Wisconsin recall election tell us, if anything, about the general election?
Well, I think Wisconsin is important for two reasons. The first is that Scott Walker has shown and demonstrated tremendous courage in pushing forward the reforms that he believed were necessary to save Wisconsin. He's fought this battle for a very long time and has really been a real national leader. And so the fact that after all these millions of dollars, after going through the recall, that it looks like he's going to win the race, I think is important for the Republican Party, for the conservative movement, for the state of Wisconsin, and for looking at a model of fiscal responsibility that we can turn to at the national level when we're ready to. On the second point, there's different schools of thought. There are many people who think that we're going to get a lot of good data out of this recall election, and if Republicans win, I think the latest poll is 52-45 for Walker. If we win by 3 to 5 points, that will bode very well for the fall. I think in terms of organizing and IDing voters and creating excitement and enthusiasm, it will. There's also been some polling that's shown that this governor's race is pretty local. It's hyper-local. The governor's races and national races are different. And so, we'll see. Obviously, the Romney campaign needs to expand the map. They need to find that sixth state that they can turn away from Obama to Romney. Wisconsin, Bush lost Wisconsin by 0.2% in 2000 and 0.4% in 2004. So Republicans have been close there, but Obama did win it by a significant margin in 2008. So my sense is it's a positive development. It means Wisconsin will be a battleground state. It means the Romney campaign will look at it very closely, but it remains to be seen.
What are the chances that the Republicans will hold on to the House and take back the Senate?
I think pretty good. I mean, I'd say 60%, 65%. Obviously, it depends a lot on the presidential. When you look at what the Republican Senate Campaign Committee has done in expanding the map, I think they've done a pretty good job. There have been a couple states where they've missed, but you have really 8 or 9 or 10 seats that are in play, and almost all of them are Democratic seats. There's only 2 Republican seats that are in play: Nevada with Dean Heller, and Massachusetts with Scott Brown. Scott Brown appears to be in strong shape. Dean Heller also seems to be up a little bit, although that one is a little bit less developed at this point. In order for Republicans to take the Senate back, if they win the presidency and the vice presidency, they need 3 seats, because then the vice president can break the tie. If they do not win the White House, then they'll need a net of 4 seats. One thing that's making it more complicated is Maine. You have Olympia Snowe retiring. You have Angus King, a former governor, running as an independent. He's being very coy about who he would caucus with if he were elected. I think the expectation is he probably would caucus with the Democrats, but it's very hard to predict. So it could be that Republicans actually need one more seat to get that safe majority. So it's very hard to go from a net of 4 to a net of 5. The higher you go in that number, the harder it is to pick up that additional seat, because you've got some low-hanging fruit. In the Senate, we're going to get Montana, I think. We're definitely going to have North Dakota, and we're definitely going to have Nebraska. That gets you 3. And you probably need, as I said, maybe 2 more to be safe. Missouri looks possible, and there's one other state that's out there. So I feel pretty good about Republican prospects for taking the Senate back. I feel very good about the House. I think Democrats need a net of 25 seats to take the House back. I don't see that kind of wave happening this year. They may take up 5 seats. We may take up 5 seats. But ultimately, I think the House is going to remain basically where it is.
Matt Mackowiak, thanks for joining us today on the Savage Nation.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you. You can learn more at PotomacStrategyGroup.com.
I'm Michael Savage. We'll be right back.
Savage.